Hey there, I'm that Scottish nerd, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at the deck profile and some battles of Orbeetle VMax, one of my personal favourite decks right now. So if you love fun, interesting decks, kind of off-meta decks, then be sure to subscribe to my channel down below and give the video a like if you enjoy it at any point. And as always, there are timestamps down below in the description. Starting off this deck profile, we are going to be looking at the Orbeetle VMax itself. We have covered this a little bit in a previous deck profile, but it was in combination with a bunch of other partner Pokemon. This deck is purely focused on the Orbeetle VMax, so we'll have a look at the stats here. The Eerie Beam ability is the main focus of the deck, as it allows you to put 1 damage counter or 10 damage on each of your opponent's Pokemon they have in play. And you can do this multiple times every turn because it's for each of your Orbeetle VMax. So we're typically going to have 2 or 3 of these in play, which means you can spread 20 to 30 damage every single turn. And then once you have built up enough damage on your opponent's Pokemon, we're going to be using G-Max Wave, which for 2 energy deals 50 damage, but then you do an additional 50 damage for each energy on your opponent's active Pokemon. The main thing that this is going to be great for is if your opponent's active has 3 energy on it, you deal a total of 200 damage, and then with your Eerie Beams you can typically finish off all of the tag team Pokemon, all of the Vs, all of that kind of thing. The main issue that you have is with VMAXs, but you should just try and get through it with all of the healing cards that you can see here that we have, as we do have quite a bit. So in the early game we're going to be using our Snorlax with Gourmandize. It's a very popular card as it allows you to draw until you have 7 cards in your hand, and you can typically pare your hand down quite easily with the amount of discarding that we have, and then draw through your deck this way, as well as just being a 1 prizer, so you don't really mind if it gets knocked out. And then we also have a Jirachi here, similar thing, we have a lot of switching cards, so it kind of makes sense to have the amazing rare Jirachi, as it's just a free draw, totally makes sense. And then we also have a couple of Lily's Pokédoll to count as pseudo Pokemon for your opponent to take easy knockouts on, but they don't take a prize. And this is going to allow us to get extra turns of Eerie Beam if we need just a couple more turns of damage. Now looking at the trainers and the supporters, all that good stuff, we have a lot of supporters since we have a tag call engine here. The main focus also being on special energy, since we are playing multiple copies of Guzman Hala. This is going to allow us to search out our tools, our stadiums and our special energy, and since we have a lot of special energy we can easily get those searched out, along with our U-turn board and Turffield Stadium. We can use it to search out a grass evolution, and of course that means getting us our Orbeetle VMax, which is very important as it is the main Pokemon that we're using in the whole deck. And then of course U-turn board giving us a reduction in our retreat cost, so we have 1 less retreat, basically retreating for free in between our Orbeetles, and also using our switching cards like Birdkeeper, Mallow and Lana to go between our Pokemon. And in addition to Mallow and Lana healing 120, we also have Cheryl from Battle Styles, as we can completely heal our Orbeetle. And if we're in the late game and we're just short of a couple of damage, then this is going to come in really clutch to give us some stalling to get that extra couple of Eerie Beams in. And then the rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. Like I said, we have the tag call engine, we have the Pal Pads and Cynthia and Caitlyn, so we can use the tag call to search out Cynthia and Caitlyn. Cynthia and Caitlyn gets us back a healing supporter like Cheryl or Mallow and Lana. And then we also have the couple of Pal Pads, 2 Pal Pads to put back our Cynthia and Caitlyn. So we have a lot of usage out of our supporters, and the energy cards as well to finish this off here is pretty varied. We do have mostly colourless energy, as like I said we're going to be discarding those anyway with the Cheryl, and getting things like the recycle can be nice for if you don't get your U-turn boards, then using that as a way of freely moving, as well as the weakness guard being important to cover your bases against fire decks, although those are going to be difficult matchups anyways. And of course one card that I did forget to mention is the reset stamp. This is good in the late game if you're going behind on prize cards, so your opponent knocks out a Snorlax and then a VMax, then you're going to have them on 2 prizes, so you can reset stamp them down to 2 and take advantage of that while they're struggling with their hand. Overall, it's a super fun deck, not exactly a tier 1 deck just yet, but is super fun to play since I just love spreading damage and putting damage all around my opponent's board and then being able to take big knockouts with the attack on Orbeetle VMax. So let's see what we can make happen in these games. I'm sure we'll come up against a bunch of meta decks that we can totally dominate with our Eerie Beams, and let's see what the matches have in store for us. Starting off our first game, looks like we're going to be up against a Pika ROM here with the Mewtwo most likely, based on the deck box and sleeves, but they do have the Boltund in the active. Let's start off by putting a Weakness Guard energy onto our Orbeetle. We also have the Jirachi Amazing Rare that we can make use of. Could go for the Capture energy here, although the Tag Call is also pretty nice. I think we'll go for the Capture though. I mean, we are going to be drawing into both of them here anyway since we're just passing, but yeah, it's not going to really make a difference since they are both on top of our deck and it is just an additional draw overall, but sure, we'll take the Capture, doesn't really matter like I said. My opponent's going for the energy attachment with the Cherish Ball, grabbing them a Pika ROM, so they want to be attaching onto there. It's going to be an interesting matchup as my opponent is going to be having to actually 2-hit us with things like Full Blitz. They're not able to get a reliable 1-hit at all, and we are getting hit with a Marnie, which is a bit unfortunate. Crushing Hammers I don't mind too much since we do play a bunch of energy, but we are putting a bunch of that energy onto the bottom of our deck, so it's not ideal. We do draw into double Tag Call, and the Guzman Howl is pretty nice actually since we can shuffle our deck, as well as making use of the Tag Calls as well. We'll have to see if we can get ourselves a Snorlax, that'd be good. Using the Guzmahala to get a Snorlax and a U-turn board to get this Jirachi out active would be pretty sweet. And my opponent is going crazy with the Crushing Hammers, finally hitting a heads after 3 Crushing Hammers attempts. And we do lose our energy attachment like I said, but it's going to be fine because my opponent is going to be taking their time to actually get everything set up, get all of the energy in play that they need, and then starting to use their attacks. So that's going to give us plenty of opportunity in order to use our Eerie Beams to build up damage and then go into our Orbeetle to actually attack, as it will have a pretty good attack in this matchup. A Pika ROM with 3 energy is going to allow us to deal a total of 200 damage, which means that we only need 4 Eerie Beams to get a knockout as well, which is definitely reasonable. We have a Pokédoll, which I'll certainly put into play. That's going to be a good Pokemon or pseudo Pokemon to pivot into. We have a Guzmahala, and we'll take the Cynthia Caitlyn off of the Tide Call. Then we also have to decide what we want to get rid of here, and if we want to use our Tide Call, but I think we'll leave it as we're going to be discarding a couple of cards here with our Guzmahala, discarding the Tide Call and our spare Guzmahala. It's going to grab us the U-turn board, the Capture energy, as well as the Turffield Stadium. So all of these are going to be comboing very nicely with each other as we can use the Capture energy in order to get out another Pokemon. Just going to grab the Snorlax. As I mentioned, we want to be drawing as many cards in the early game as possible. And then we use our Turffield to grab out an Orbeetle VMax. We did unfortunately prize a VMax from the looks of things, so that's a bit of a shame, but we have our Stellar Wish Jirachi, not Stellar Wish, the other one. I'm so used to using Stellar Wish Jirachi and just think that they're all Stellar Wish, but we'll take the Quick Ball here. Reset Stamp's not going to be super huge, so we'll take the Quick Ball. We'll retreat into the Snorlax. Do we want to use the Quick Ball? I kind of think that we do. It would give us some extra draws with the Snorlax, also gives us an extra Orbeetle. So I'm going to go for that and get a second Orbeetle into play, and then we can Gormandize and draw a total of 6 cards, which is excellent. We get an extra energy as well as the U-turn board and a couple of Orbeetle. Hopefully the Turffield Stadium sticks and my opponent doesn't have a replacement, because that's going to give us an extra VMax, which would be very nice to pivot into, or even if my opponent knocks out our Snorlax, we can promote an Orbeetle. They do have the boss's orders in their hand, because of course they do, they always have boss's orders in their hand, and they are going to be retreating into the Pika ROM here, most likely just going for the full blitz in order to get extra energy into play, but we will be able to use our Eerie Beam as well as potentially get an attack off. Like I said, they are going for the full blitz, dealing 150 damage, and now they can put 3 energy into play. Let's see, choosing only to put 1 into play though, with the 1 going onto Bolt Hunt, which does make a lot of sense. If they put it onto the active, then we would have easily gotten a knockout. So we'll grab ourselves the second VMax here. Also tempted to put down a third Orbeetle for when we do get our other VMax off of the prizes here. Start it off with the Eerie Beam, just to remember, to be honest. We have Mallow and Lana as well, so I can actually use that to heal the majority of the damage which is on us. Go into our second Orbeetle and then retreat out. I kind of like this idea. We have a Snorlax that we can get rid of, so let's go with this. We have our Snorlax and the fourth Orbeetle. Get rid of both of those. We'll move into our second VMax, healing up 120 damage, and then using our second Eerie Beam, taking 10 damage across all my opponent's Pokemon, of course, and then we'll retreat back into our VMAX, putting the grass energy onto the VMAX here so that we can get an attack off, and we'll also put down the third basic Orbeetle V and just go for the attack of 200 damage. Like I said, my opponent's extremely close to being knocked out now. We only have to use Eerie Beam twice and we'll be able to get a knockout on this following turn, and my opponent will be forced to put up another Pokemon that we can actually hit into and most likely get an attack and knockout very easily. They are going to be using a Marnie, so we lose out on our Cynthia and Caitlyn, but I'm fine with this because we get a bunch of energy, so we do like those energy attachments. My opponent going for the full blitz, once again dealing 150, putting an energy onto Mewtwo. Interesting that they just put the 1 energy on there rather than the full amount. And we'll go for the turf field. I know we don't have anything in here, but I just want to check a couple of things. We do have our Palpad, which is very important, and we do have our Cheryls as well. So we're looking good in terms of everything else and in terms of the energy count in the deck, so I do like that. Let's see, if we want to use our Bird Keepers, probably going to make sense here, because then we can retreat with the one that we've got on the bench. So we'll go Eerie Beam, and we'll use our Bird Keeper to go into the one with the U-turn board. It's going to draw us 3 cards, which is excellent, and then we can once again use Eerie Beam, which is going to get the knockout on the active, easily taking 3 prize cards without even having to attack, which is awesome and exactly why I love playing this deck so much. We do pick up the second Palpad, which is very nice. Now we're only dealing a total of 100 damage here if we want to hit into the Dedenne, which is okay, but is definitely not optimal whatsoever. So I think we're going to start attaching energy onto some of our other Pokemon. We'll actually retreat into the Jirachi here. Then I'm going to start building up energy elsewhere, so I'm going to be attaching onto our second VMAX, and we can start drawing cards with our Jirachi. We get a reset stamp, which is fine, and we'll just pass it over to my opponent. I mean, sure, we could have hit into my opponent for 100 damage and get them a bit closer to a knockout. Only would have taken a couple of Eerie Beams, but of course my opponent does have the GX attack Tingly Return on the Dedenne here, which makes it so that Dedenne goes back into your opponent's hand. I didn't really fancy wasting all of the damage going onto the Dedenne and my opponent just cancelling it out, so that's why we opted not to attack there and take a bit more of a passive, slower route so that we can just build up our hand. Sure, my opponent has hit us with a Marnie, and you do always have to be wary of that, as it's just something that's typically going to happen quite often when you're playing this deck. It's something that you have to be wary of and be sure that you can play around as much as possible in terms of thinning your deck. And see here, my opponent is able to take a knockout on our Jirachi, but we don't mind that too much because it is just a 1 prize Pokemon. My opponent has only taken 1 prize so far. We have the Malolanos that we can make use of once again, so I think we will go for that. We'll promote our VMAX with the damage counters on it. and we get into another energy. So we'll go ahead and use our Mallow and Lana here, discarding our other Mallow and Lana as well as Cheryl. Cheryl's great, but we have plenty of Palpas and things like that. Oh man, I've just realised that I've completely forgotten. Too busy talking, I forgot to use Eerie Beam, but it's fine because we're going to retreat back into that Orbeetle anyway to get an attack off, so it doesn't actually matter, but you always want to remember to use Eerie Beam every time that you have the opportunity to. So we're going to go back into the Orbeetle and it's going to be totally fine because we can get Eerie Beam off anyways. And we can go ahead and attach another energy onto our bench, and I'll just slap the U-turn board onto the active, because then even if we get knocked out we can go ahead and get the U-turn board back into our hand, of course. And here we are getting the knockout, since we have built up a whole bunch of Eerie Beam damage on that bolt on V, so we're very easily able to get a knockout dealing over 150 damage, so very good there. My opponent is going to be promoting a Crobat. We drew into our third VMax off the prizes as well, which is awesome. So we're going to be able to easily get into that. We're just looking for a supporter card here so that we can draw and hopefully get into our grass energy. My opponent does have the Mewtwo with the 3 energy on it, so they're able to get an attack off, but it's probably not going to be enough here since we do have quite a bit of HP remaining. And of course my opponent is going to be able to damage us for 160 damage. We do get the Cynthia and Caitlyn, which is perfect. We can use that to get back a useful supporter here. Definitely just discard this Tool Scrapper since my opponent isn't going to be able to do anything with their board. I mean, they don't have any tool in play. And let's see here, we could go for the Mallow and Lana, Goose Mahalo. So many good options here, kind of like the Bird Keeper as well, or even the Boss's Orders. So many good options. I think we'll go for the Bird Keeper, so it gives us some good movement options. We get the grass energy off the top, which is perfect. Here we go with the Eerie Beam, my opponent giving us a wee smiley face, which is very nice of them. And we'll go for the retreat into our other VMax on the bench, attach the grass energy, use a Eerie Beam, and we did draw into the reset stamp that we can use here. Put my opponent into a hand of 5 cards, which is slightly less than what they had, but mainly it's just to mess with them in case they were holding on to any boss's orders or anything of the sorts. And we are going to be dealing 200 damage here, which is making it very close for my opponent getting knocked out since they do have 10 HP remaining, so we only require 1 Eerie Beam to win the game here. And again, I've said it already, but this is exactly why I love this deck so much. You're most likely dealing 200 damage, but even dealing 150 damage, you're getting so many knockouts just from building up damage with your Eerie Beams and using that ability multiple times every single turn, as well as being able to heal a whole bunch with your healing cards like Cheryl and Mallow Lana. Looks like my opponent's going to be retreating into a Vika Vault here, and they are using a Professor's Research to get a fresh hand. But like I said, as long as they keep that Mewtwo in play and they don't heal it, then we are just going to be able to win the game straight out. My opponent is going to be using the Vika Vault, stopping us from playing items, but it only deals 50 damage, so it's not going to be anywhere near getting a knockout on us, and we're able to use Eerie Beam to win the game, finishing off that Mew and Mewtwo tag team. Very convincing victory against a Pika ROM deck there, and that's definitely what you'll love to see. Let's get into another match and see how we get on. Getting into this one, we have a pretty sweet opening hand with a Quick Ball, Pokédoll, Grass, Energy, and the U-turn board, as well as the turf field to be fair. So yeah, pretty sweet opening hand. We have the Quick Ball that we can use to grab a Snorlax with, and my opponent is playing some sort of grass deck. And it's going to be a pretty easy one since they are all basic or stage 1 non-multi-prize Pokemon, but we can use our Eerie Beams to whittle them down nice and quickly here. So it should be a reasonable matchup. We'll attach our U-turn board, we've got our Grass Energy, we'll Quick Ball away, And let's see what we want to get rid of. I think we'll get rid of the Cheryl. We can always get it back later on, and we do have multiple copies, so I'd rather get rid of that over the Mallow and Lana, which does give us some extra movement. And we'll get our Snorlax, like I said. Don't want to be attacking because we want to Gormandize in order to draw 5 cards here. See what we get into. We get a Jirachi and a couple of energy, things like that. Mainly I'm just going to be using our Turf Field and look to go in with our VMax on this following turn, as we do have the Mallow and Lana that we can use as a switch in order to just switch into our Orbeetle VMax. Doesn't look like my opponent has a whole lot going on. They did get into the evolution here for Cherrim. This is going to allow my opponent to attach as many grass energy as they like, so it's going to be reasonable for them and as the main engine of their deck in order to get it to work and all that good stuff. We will put the Turf Field into play now since they do have the Cherrim. Don't really mind giving my opponent grass evolutions at this stage. And we're going to get into our Orbeetle VMax. Also use our tag call here so that we can grab ourselves a Cynthia and Caitlyn, as well as another Mallow and Lana. And then we will just use our Mallow and Lana, like I said, going into our Orbeetle. And we can start using our Eerie Beam to spread damage across my opponent's board, as well as deal 50 damage here in order to get a knockout on my opponent's active. And we can take the first prize card of the game. Just a weakness guard energy, which we don't really care about. Definitely want to see some more basic Orbeetle, that would be great. My opponent's trying to get some more Cherrim set up, and they also have the Oricorio here in order to draw some cards, which is definitely reasonable for them. And we are just missing out on our Orbeetle, like I said. Being able to have that movement and use Eerie Beam multiple times would be ideal, just like we did in the previous game, because that's what's going to allow us to whittle my opponent down, and we can get multiple knockouts if we do that. Now my opponent did replace our Turffield Stadium, which is very unfortunate, but hopefully we should be able to find our evolutions just fine here. We do have a Cynthia and Caitlyn, of course, that we can make use of. My opponent's really playing out their hand quite a bit, looking for some Pokemon that they can make use of here. Looks like that was a Tapu Bulu that they grabbed. They're just going to be hitting us for 20 damage, and we do have to switch out. Well, that's totally fine, as we can go into a Jirachi or into our doll. So I think we'll put the Pokédoll up, as we can then just put that back into the deck, no problem. And we'll go for that right now. Put that into our deck and put the Orbeetle back into play. And we'll go for a Cynthia and Caitlyn here as well, so that we can draw a couple of cards. Putting the Cheryl back into the discard pile, and then we can grab it back, since we do have a Mallow and Lana already, and we also draw into another one, which is reasonable enough. We did get a Capture Energy, so I can attach that onto our Jirachi in order to search out another Orbeetle here, and we can start attaching to that over these coming turns. Should be in a good spot. We'll use Eerie Beam, and then we can attack our opponent here for 100 damage. That's not quite going to be enough to get a knockout, but over the next couple of turns with our Eerie Beams, we will be able to easily get a knockout on this Tapu Bulu, as it does have 130 hit points, so it only has 10 remaining, which is just one Eerie Beam away from being knocked out. My opponent is going to be looking to build up some extra Cherrim, it looks like. They are staggering them after all. And we can go in with our Jirachi here. My opponent's just going to concede. They realise that we can easily have a free movement, even if they try and stall with the attack that they were using. We can switch out and retreat and all that good stuff, so we were easily going to win that game. Let's get into one more and see what we can make happen. We're once again starting this game with a Orbeetle in the active, but we are up against Mad Party, so it's going to be a ridiculously easy win for us, as we can just go in and Eerie Beam over and over until we knock out every single one of my opponent's Pokemon. We don't even need the energy to get an attack off, because we can just use Eerie Beam until we win. Sure, I could have retreated here and put up the Pokédoll just so that my opponent doesn't do any damage to us whatsoever, but I know the consistency of Mad Party isn't always the best, especially in the opening turns, and you really have to get through your deck and be sure that you're thinning everything out. So in the early turns we shouldn't really be worried about anything here. My opponent's opting to go for the Mew here, which I find hilarious because Mew doesn't help against Eerie Beam whatsoever. So they really should have searched out a different Pokemon with their level ball there. It was a bit of a waste for them. But yeah, as I was saying, we shouldn't be bothered about taking too much damage because my opponent's likely not going to get a huge amount of Mad Party Pokemon in the discard pile, but you never know, we might be surprised and they might get a knockout, in which case we're going to be in trouble, so we'll see. But no, there we go, as I said, they didn't even get an attack off, never mind dealing a lot of damage, so we're perfectly fine. We can go for the Bird Keeper to draw a couple of cards here since we don't have a great hand overhaul. And we have a Snorlax that we can put down and use Gormandize with, which is excellent. Also use the Quick Ball to get rid of a Tool Scrapper. That's going to grab us another Orbeetle that we so desperately need here so that we can actually get going. Also putting down another Pokédoll, and we'll go ahead and shuffle the active one into the deck so that we can promote our Snorlax and use Gormandize. And we'll also put down another U-turn board so that we get the optimal draws off of Gormandize here. And it looks like we're kind of lackluster since we don't have the energy, but we do have Guzman-Hala, so that's going to grab us the Turf Field as well as any energy that we want. Mainly the Turf Field though, because that's going to allow us to start using Eerie Beam and start building up to those multiple knockouts that I was talking about. My opponent does have the Poltergeist here, which is going to be very good for them. That's going to allow them to start drawing and discarding more Mad Party Pokemon, getting a little bit closer to the energy that they need as well. Let's see if they have a supporter for turn. That's going to be crucial for them to draw through their deck. They're going to be looking for a Professor's Research, I'm sure. And it doesn't look like they have a supporter, but they did draw into the energy, so they're able to do a total of 100 damage. Still not the best because they're not even able to knock out our Snorlax. And now it's going to be on us, and we're going to go for the Guzma-Hala like I mentioned. We'll get rid of, I think, a Tackle. Tackle is probably best to hold on to because then we can keep a Cynthia and Caitlyn around. So we'll discard our Cheryl as well as a Mallow and Lana. We do have the double Pal Pads, so I'm not too worried about getting rid of these supporter cards. We can always get them back quite easily. And we'll also take the Capture Energy potentially. And the other option is the Recycle. Let's see how many VMAXs we have. We do have all of our VMAXs, but we'd also have all of our U-turn boards. So we will just take the Capture Energy here. That's totally fine. We can stick that somewhere and get our other Orbeetle out. And we can also go for our Turf Field, of course, to get our VMAXs into play nice and quickly here. Evolve there, and we'll go for the Capture onto the Orbeetle, getting out our next Orbeetle V, slap the U-turn board on there as well, and I think we could just hold on to the Tackle. We would just be getting Cynthia and Caitlyn after all, and it would plus our hand, but it's also going to give us better draws, so sure, we'll take the Tackle now and grab Cynthia and Caitlyn. Kind of like double Cynthia and Caitlyn here, doesn't seem too terrible. We do have Mallow and Lana's already available, so this is fine, we'll take both these. And then we can still Gormandize for one, I think. Could potentially Pal Pad, but nah, we'll hold on to that for once we've used our Cynthia and Caitlyn's, because Cynthia and Caitlyn gets back a supporter, and then we just use the Pal Pads to shuffle the Cynthia and Caitlyn's back into the deck, so you have that constant ability to refresh supporters over and over again throughout the game, which is going to be crucial here. If my opponent gets enough Mad Party Pokemon into the discard, then they will be able to get to a point where they can 2-hit our Orbeetle VMAXs, and we're going to be having to switch between them quite a bit in order to make it so that my opponent doesn't get a knockout basically. So they are getting another Dedenne with Mad Party into the discard with the T-Break ability there on Poltergeist. It's going to allow them to do even more damage, well 20 more, and they will be able to get a knockout on our Snorlax, so we'll be able to promote our VMAX here, start spreading. Unfortunately not quite able to get a knockout on the Bunnelby, but if my opponent doesn't evolve the Sinistes that they have on the bench here, then we'll be able to get a double knockout by using 2 Eerie Beams, well 3 Eerie Beams, my mistake there. And then we will be pretty close the turn after to winning the game. Looks like my opponent doesn't have those evolutions for the Sinistes, so we will be able to get knockouts here, as we do have a turf field still in play. We do just need to find our third VMax here. Hopefully we can draw into it. So let's go ahead and slap that down. We have our Cynthia Caitlin that we're going to use here. I think we could go for the Mallow Lana. Take that one back first, and we'll discard the Quick Ball. Hold on to the reset stamp for now, for if my opponent gets knockouts. Definitely want that around. Come on, give us a VMax. Man, that's unfortunate. We're not able to get it this time, but we do have the energy at least, so we can attach that if we want to, and actually just get a knockout on the active as well. Kind of like that idea, because then it kind of takes the energy out of play, and yeah, seems reasonable. We could also just retreat here and go into our other one. Seems fine, I guess. So yeah, I'll hold off any energy for now. We'll retreat into this Orbeetle and do a second Eerie Beam before passing over to my opponent now. And that's going to mean so that for the following turn, we're getting a double knockout on both of these Bunnelby just from using our Eerie Beams. And again, if my opponent doesn't evolve those Sinistes, we can also get those out, which would give us 4 prizes in total. And if we do get the third VMax, then we can also be close to taking out the Mew. Oh no, the Mew has 60 HP as well, so my bad. I was thinking it was 50, but unfortunately it is 60, so we'll be a little bit short on there. But getting through all of these Eerie Beams is going to be our main goal. We do have a lot of HP for my opponent to get through, so we should be fine. My opponent using the T-Break along with a Professor's Research in order to get through their deck. And they are going to be getting through to a pretty small deck by the end of this game as well. So it's going to be a race against time for my opponent to try and get multiple knockouts on us. They do have to take out 2 VMaxes in order to win here, since they did knock out our Snorlax there, which is totally fine. It gives us plenty of time with the amount of heal cards that we have. We do have Cheryl. Like I said, we don't have to use our energies to attack. We could always just let my opponent hit into us and then use Cheryl to heal everything. There's an attack for 180 damage, so we could go for a Mallow Lana play here, which it would be good. We'll start off with Eerie Beam, of course, and we'll also use Turf Field to get our third VMax out of the deck and put that into play. And of course we are going to be using our Mallow Lana. I'm pretty set on this now, so let's go for it. We'll discard, yes please. And what do we want to discard? Reset Stamp could be useful, but honestly it's not going to be useful enough, I don't feel like. So we'll just go ahead and discard it along with the Tag Call, I think. Although the Tag Call could get us something Caitlin back, so we'll leave that. We'll get rid of the energy since we don't really need it. We'll go into our Orbeetle that we just evolved into and use Eerie Beam, and that's going to knock out both of these Bunnelby, like I said, getting 2 prizes here, and we're going to be able to get a further Eerie Beam off, get a Cheryl, which is excellent, along with a reset stamp. My opponent promotes the Poltergeist. I will retreat here into our next Orbeetle, use Eerie Beam once again, and there's not really anything else that I want to play here. We could go for a Palpad, but I'll hold off on it for now, and we'll just get an attack off. My opponent did give us a Pokemon that we can knock out, since we do have the energy, and they are going to be losing the energy that they had there, which is very nice. And now we're only a couple of Eerie Beam away from actually winning the game. I say a couple, but really it's only one, since my opponent does have so much damage already in play. We only have to take 3 more prize cards on our end. So the active has got 10 HP remaining, the bench here has 10 HP remaining, so that's the second prize, and then this Poltergeist as well has 10 HP remaining, so only 1 more Eerie Beam required in order to win the game. And that is why this Mad Party matchup is so easy, and there's no way that my opponent is going to be able to win. Oh, there we go. So yeah, we'll have to see what my opponent goes for. They're playing out their whole hand and deck, just to try and get a little bit of extra damage in here, but like I said, they're not going to get a knockout anytime soon unless they're dealing the maximum amount of damage that they can possibly do, and with the amount of Pokemon that they have in play, I doubt that's going to be possible for them. They do have the Giovanni's XL, which they can use to discard some of those Pokemon, so most likely getting rid of the Pokemon that have a bunch of damage counters on them, which definitely makes sense, and help out my opponent, give them a couple of extra turns of damage. Let's see if that's what they go for. They choose not to. They get rid of the Dedenne and Pokemon that they played down, so they're still going to lose. They literally could have been fine, but not unless I'm misreading. I need to check the Giovanni. Where's it gone? Ah, okay, so yeah, issue is the Giovanni only works with stuff that doesn't have damage counters. Perhaps that's why my opponent took so long to decide what it was that they were going to do, but there's a concede because all we had to do was use Eerie Beam. Like I mentioned, we would get another multi-prize turn, and that is one of the easiest matchups that you will ever play with Orbeetle VMax, so super easy game, and you'll love to see it. And we do get our free Zacian V as well, so let me know what you thought of the video, and I'll see you in the next one.